I just put my head down and I focused on the win and I got creative. I started making deals with casino hosts in Vegas, with concierge at the high-end hotels, with socialites. I was greasing everyone to send me clients. And by the end of 2008, I had in fact built the biggest poker game in the world. It was a $250,000 buy-in, and it was populated by international billionaires, Wall Street figures, and sports stars. And this time, I wasn't going to be replaceable. And I decided the way that I would do that was I would become the bank, meaning I would vet the player, extend credit, and collect if things went bad. And this may sound like a really terrible idea, but here was why it was a calculated risk. I believed that if I had the best product on the street, if I had the biggest game in the world, if I had a game where you could sit next to your heroes, and I continued to build on that and grow that, if I had a game where hedge funds were getting made and movies were getting made, and it was fully financed, that people wouldn't have an alternative and they would pay their debts. And this actually worked pretty well. But what stopped working in New York was me. And what had previously been about taking calculated risks and going big and learning and being an entrepreneur became largely about greed. And I started to lose sight of who I was. I stopped talking to my family as much. I stopped having meaningful friendships. I had millions of dollars on the street each week. Every second I wasn't running this $250,000 game, I was out recruiting for other games until I had a poker game running every night of the week. And I started doing drugs. I started taking pills to stay up, all the crazy hours that it required. And I started drinking to deal with this emptiness and loneliness. So as you can see, the train's starting to kind of shake a little bit off the tracks. But don't worry, I have at least 2.5 more years of bad decision making before the whole thing blows up. Back in LA, I started to have problems other than just me, and I was a formidable problem. But in LA, there was a player, his name was Brad, and we affectionately called him Bad Brad, because in 4 years I never saw him win a hand of poker. And he would come to these games and just splash hundreds of thousands of dollars, and after about a year, even though he was great for business, it wore on me. So I pulled him aside and said, Brad, I don't think this game is for you. And he said, please don't take my seat. I love the community, I love the guys. And something strange started to happen at the table. Even though Bad Brad didn't seem to know after a couple years that a straight beats a pair, he started talking about his returns and his hedge fund. And people started to invest with him. And it turns out that Bad Brad raised $30 million at the table, even though he lost $5 million in the game, and that he was running a Ponzi scheme. So everyone thought that they were hustling Bad Brad, but Bad Brad was actually hustling everyone else. And so Bad Brad got caught, and he was very forthcoming to the feds about this illegal poker game that he was playing in which he lost all his money. And his testimony didn't hold a lot of weight, but now I'm on the radar of the West Coast feds, and the tabloids got a hold of the story. Back on the East Coast, I had just recruited what I thought were the recruits of a lifetime. There are these Russian-American businessmen from Brighton Beach whose stories checked out. I had private investigators that vetted people within an inch of their life. I had to. And their stories checked out. And all these guys wanted to do was play poker for obscene amounts of money. I saw someone lose $100 million in those games. And it turns out, after all, that these guys were not legitimate businessmen. Shocker. They were running the biggest insurance fraud scheme in New York City history, and they had deep ties to the Russian mob. So don't ever hire me to recruit for your company. I accidentally recruited the Russian mob. And the next thing that happened was I ran into the Italian mob as well. Listen, I had seen Goodfellas, okay? I had seen The Sopranos, and I knew that gambling was kind of their thing, but I was running these games at the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan with billionaires, so I did not think that there was crossover. Turns out there was. And it was around Christmas time when my driver, who doubled as security, said to me, and this was someone that I trusted, someone that had worked for me for 4 years. And so when he said to me, hey, I drive these guys from New Jersey, they're hedge fund guys, and they want to play in your game, I didn't think twice. I set up a meeting and met them at the Four Seasons Midtown. And when they walked in, it was super clear they were not hedge fund guys. They looked like they had just rolled off the set of Goodfellas. And they came in and, we had this very awkward hello, and I said, can I get you guys something to drink? And I'm not kidding, they ordered apple martinis. Which is, I didn't think that was the tough guy drink, but whatever. But they got to their point really quickly, and they said, if you want to continue to operate, you're going to have to give us a piece. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't go into business with the Italian mob. So I kept ducking their calls, and the games had gotten so out of control. I had truly become reckless. I was not vetting people as well as I should have. I was not collecting in a timely fashion. It was just a free-for-all. And I sat at a game, and I looked at the table, and there was $20 million on the table. And there was at least 3 seats of bad debt, uncollectible debt. And so I did the thing that I said I would never do. I started taking a rake to cover my downside. And by this time, the feds who had been listening to the Russians had put a confidential informant in the game. So it's all getting very bad. The last thing that happened before this whole thing blows up is I got a knock at my door around Christmas time. And I lived in a very secure building in Manhattan. I thought it was my doorman bringing up some packages, and it wasn't. There was a strange man on the other side of the door, and this is what happened.
Sorry, you're in the wrong. Wait, okay, hold on a second.
Not a sound. You get me?
I have money. It's all cash.
Where?
It's safe.
Where's it?
It's in the closet.
Show me. Put the money and jewelry in a bag. Gold bars, too.
Come on.
Open your mouth. Open your mouth. It wasn't an offer they made. It wasn't a suggestion. This will be your only reminder. Your mother lives alone in Telluride, Colorado. Right? Right? Right, Molly?
She doesn't live there anymore.
I see that.
So things had gotten extremely dark and dangerous. I couldn't call the cops, couldn't tell anybody, and I just sat in my apartment and waited for my face to heal and waited for their phone call, really having no idea what I was going to say because it didn't seem like turning them down was an option anymore. 1 week went by, the second week, I was really confused as to why I wasn't hearing from them. On the third week, I got the New York Times, and on the cover it said, 125 arrested in the biggest mob-related takedown in New York City history.